Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about the ubiquitous pencil. There are lots of different kinds of pencils. Today we're going to be focused on the regular plain lead, even though it's not really lead, pencil. So grab a piece of paper and a pencil, come back, and let's draw some stuff.
Pencils. Probably one of the most useful tools for any artist. A number 2 pencil. In the middle, the core of the pencil is made of graphite. It's not actually lead. Lead's a poisonous substance. Graphite is the material that makes the marks on whatever you're drawing. But there are a lot of other kinds of pencils. Colored pencils, watercolor pencils, which looks like color pencils, but when you get them wet, you can actually spread the color like a watercolor. Charcoal pencils, which has charcoal in the core. This is a cool pencil. It's just a graphite pencil like the other one, but one thing I like about this one is it has no wooden exterior. It is just a core. So it's just that graphite throughout with nothing around it except for a little tiny film that keeps your hands from getting dirty. One of my absolute favorite pencils of all. You can tell because it's so tiny. I've used it so much. This is my ebony pencil. I usually go back and use my ebony pencil to shade things that I've drawn because it just gets so dark. Today we're gonna focus on graphite pencils. Even if you don't draw a lot, you probably use a graphite pencil to prepare for the artwork you're making. Number 2 pencil is actually an HB pencil. So an HB is in the middle. H means it's hard. B stands for blackness, which is how dark it is. And usually it's darker the softer it gets. So this is my HB pencil, boom, HB. And the higher the B number, that's a 4B, the darker it gets. So a 5B would be even darker than a 4B because the lead, graphite, is softer, which means when you push on it to draw, you can push and make it darker. Whereas a 4H, it's harder. So that means even if you push harder, it might draw a little bit darker, but it's gonna hold up. And that means that it's better for staying sharp longer. B pencils are softer, so they don't stay sharp as long. So I usually sketch things out with harder pencils and then start shading things in with the softer pencils at the end. One thing I like to do when I'm trying a new material out, and I know pencils aren't a new material to us, but I'm gonna treat it like it is. But one of the things I like to do is I just like to draw simple, geometric, 3-dimensional shapes. And that gives me the chance to practice using the material. So right now I have an H pencil. It's a 5H, which means it's harder. So it's good for sketching in the objects that I'm drawing. So I have a rectangular prism, like a box or a brick. So there's the brick. Let's go ahead and try a cylinder. Another simple geometric shape that we come in contact with a lot. A can is a cylinder. A bottle is a cylinder on the bottom. I know my coffee is in a container. That is a cylinder. And another common object that we see. So if you didn't notice, that's why I didn't draw the top of my rectangular prism, because I knew I was gonna put the cylinder on top of it. So there's the cylinder on top of the rectangular prism, or the can on top of the brick. And on the very top, a sphere. Something that I draw lots of when I'm trying to test out new materials, just to see if I can control it as much as I want. To make something darker, you're gonna press harder on it, and that's how you're gonna create the shadows. Using the 5H pencil, which is hard, I'm just gonna use this to note where the shadows go. So if my light source is like right over here, then this side is gonna be a shadow, this side's gonna be lighter, and this side's gonna be sort of in between. And there'll also be a shadow on the ground. on the can, the light is hitting right here, which means that this side is gonna be the darkest. And one thing that's nice is these different shapes are gonna allow us to make different shading effects. So this one's gonna be darkest here, and then it's gonna get lighter and lighter and lighter until it's light. And then the shadow is right there. And then the sphere, which is going to have a shadow on the bottom half of it, or on the opposite of the light. And then over here is like the highlight area with a shadow on the lid of the can. That's basically all the details, all the major shadows and details blocked in. So I'm gonna head over to my HB, which is kind of in the middle. It's like a number 2 pencil. And if you've used a number 2 pencil before, you know, to fill in forms and bubbles and stuff, you know that it's dark enough to bubble the bubbles in dark, but it's also hard enough that like the bubbles don't smudge and smear all over the place. So that's one thing about a B pencil. A B pencil is soft enough that it smudges more, which can be used to your advantage if you're trying to shade things in. So right here, this is gonna be dark. And you can actually smudge that a little bit. See how it smudges? And that helps to fill in that shadow. You can also see I'm kind of holding it more on the side so I can shade it in on the side. Now the smudging is going to come in very handy in this can because the shadow is going to fade. On this brick, the shadow just changes value based on the side that's getting hit by the light. But the can, the light is moving around it, so the shadow is going to start off dark and then fade to a lighter shadow. Now, no matter what material you're using, your own style of doing things is gonna show through. So you can probably see like my drawing style while I'm making this picture. And it's a lot looser, and there's a lot of like lines and mark making that are a little bit kind of chaotic and haphazard. That's just how I like things to look. But I achieved my goals anyway. Lightest, middle, this needs to be a lot darker. So let's move down to a 6B. So a 6B is a lot further down on the dark scale. So you can see right away, I'm not even pressing that hard, and it's a lot darker than the previous pencil. So usually I tend to be careful around the edges and the corners, and then I just let this crazy mark making take over. I feel like it gives character to the drawing. We'll still get the idea that it's dark right here, but at the same time, I get to have fun scribbling all over like that. Use my finger to blend that in. And now right here is where there's gonna be a little bit of a problem, because the shadow that's being cast is darker than this side of the brick. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna push harder. So pressing harder, not crazy hard because you don't want to break the pencil, but using pressure will also increase how dark it is. And we can always erase if we determine that something's a little too dark. We can lighten it up by erasing it a little, because I'm feeling like that's not as defined as I would like it to be. Now, another thing about B pencils is that because they're softer, and because you push harder on them, and because they're darker, they also need to be sharpened more often. All right, so we know pressure makes it darker. The softer lead makes it darker. I didn't do this trick, but another trick that I use with pencils, and it kind of takes a little bit of forethought to do this, and I didn't do it just now, but when I first sharpen a pencil, I try to focus on the small things that I need to do while the pencil's sharp. So like right here under the edge of this can is going to be dark, so I need to do that with the sharp point. Same thing for this right here. This is going to be darkest right here, so I need to use the sharp point just to kind of make that edge. And then as the pencil gets duller, because I'm using it up, then I switch over to areas that I just need to color in, like so. Now I need to make this a little darker. Since this is a 6B, this is gonna blend even better than the other one. Sometimes I just scribble things in just for the sole purpose of blending it over. Now, the drawback to this easy smudging and blending is that smudges just happen. If you don't like those, you can always erase smudges. I just tend to embrace them because they just keep happening. So the smudges just become the atmosphere of the picture. So remember, the light's coming from up here. I feel like that's a little too far. I'll probably have to fix it, but. So it's darkest on the opposite side of the light. And then it gets lighter and lighter and lighter. All right. So now we're going to use the power of the eraser to help with this sphere on top. I purposely overdid it just to show you that it can be forgiving to use the graphite pencil. So a 6B is pretty soft, which means it erases pretty easily too. So I can always go back, especially if I make my ball not as round as I wish I had. There, that's a little better. And I can use it to do the opposite of shading. So like if I'm using the pencil to create the black shadows and darkness, I can use the eraser to create the highlights and light parts. And I can just go back and forth, making it look more three-dimensional and realistic. Like so. Now, that's a lot of the shadows. One thing that I need to do is, in order to bring out the light areas, you have to think about the background. So even though the background is pretty plain in this picture, I'm going to use it just as a way of highlighting the light parts by giving them something dark to be up against. Now this is my ebony pencil. You can see, like, I'm not even pressing very hard at all, and you can see that it's already, like, without pressing it, it's as dark as the dark of this 6B that I was pressing really hard. So, well, not really hard, but I was putting pressure on the 6B to create this, and I was barely doing anything with this ebony pencil, and it's just as dark, if not darker, with very little pressure. All right, so the last thing I need to do is put a tone in the background to let the highlights of these objects show through. So sometimes for a tone, I just, especially if I'm embracing those smudges, I'm just gonna put some marks back there. I'm kind of a fan of interesting marks, and I'll rub those in. That's gonna give the background a tone and make it a little more interesting. One trick I like to do is I let the corners get a little darker. It's a trick your camera on your phone knows too. So sometimes you can press that button on your camera and make the edges of your picture start to fade into darkness. It creates a little bit more drama, and it focuses attention on the objects that are lit. And there we go. That's how a graphite pencil works. You can use pressure to make it darker. You can use softer leaded pencils to make it darker. You can use your eraser to highlight things. I hope you like that. We're gonna try to do more focuses on specific media in the future. So check those out, and I will see you next time. Bye.